Hello and welcome back to On the Brink. Today's episode is brought to you by Copper and Aave. Let's start with Copper. It's the global provider of blockchain infrastructure solutions for institutional investors who are actively trading digital assets. Its award-winning custody application is connected to 25 of the largest exchanges in the world, ensuring safe storage and movement of assets for the biggest crypto hedge funds, market makers, family offices, and high net worth individuals. Their clear loop system is the first off-exchange settlement network for digital assets. It's the safest way to trade balances in custody across multiple exchanges without requiring on-chain settlement, on-chain movement of assets. To learn more, visit copper.co or reach out on Twitter at copperhq. This show is also brought to you by Aave, A-A-V-E. Aave is an open source and non-custodial liquidity protocol where users can earn interest on deposits and borrow digital assets. It's a decentralized, community-governed protocol. Learn more about Aave at aave.com. Today we're talking about the glorious Bitcoin energy debate, which, I'm sure no one's fed up with at this point. So we bring on McCook. He is a civil engineer, and he's actually been making estimates of Bitcoin's energy consumption and alternatives like gold in the financial sector since 2014. So he's really made his mark on this debate. We dig into some of the extreme nuances here. I mean, looking at the difference between energy and electricity generation, why you can't just generalize electricity consumption to carbon emissions, even subtle distinctions like CO2 versus CO2e. And then, of course, we get into Haas's estimates of the gold in the financial system, which he has been so kind as to update for us. He's really one of the key voices on this debate, especially comparing Bitcoin to these other alternative systems. It's a really great conversation. I think you'll find that he has a huge amount of subject matter expertise. Let's dive right into it.
Down by bad mortgage investments, Lehman, which has 25,000 employees, will be liquidated.
The federal government loans American International Group, AIG, $85 billion.
This is a different kind of market, and the Fed is asleep.
The federal government is stepping in to stabilize Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the two mortgage giants that have been threatened by the housing crisis.
The Bank of England has pumped £75 billion more into Britain's ailing economy with a new round of quantitative easing.
You print a couple $1 trillion, and all of a sudden, people start to worry. So out of this worry, we have something called the Bitcoin.
So McCook, you're one of the prominent voices in the quote-unquote Bitcoin energy debate, which is the worst debate in the world, but it's one that we must have, I guess. You've written some really, really good stuff. You've been at it for a very long time. You had an analysis of, I believe, Bitcoin versus gold in terms of the energy outlay back in 2014, which you refreshed recently. So it's been a long career of contemplating these issues for you. Haas, welcome to On the Brink.
No, very good to be here. Hello, Nick.
All right. It's, I think, what is it? It's about Thursday morning in Australia.
Yep.
Is that right?
So if I kept to my traditional bedtime, I would have woken up completely oblivious to the carnage that just beset us in the past 12 hours.
Oh, that's right.
So I decided to stay up an extra half hour, and I watched the show. So I've caught about as much sleep in these past few days as you've caught food.
Oh goodness, yeah. Well, it has been fun. I as we were just talking, I concluded my fast. I thought my fast would redeem Bitcoin in a certain way, and I felt that we were being punished, and so what do? You you self-flagellate, you incur some physical harm, and so that was the point of the fast. It didn't work.
Penance is cheap. It only costs a few Satoshis.
Well, we're talking about penance. We're going to talk about indulgences later on in the show. I think you know what I'm referring to. I love how impregnated the energy debate is with, religious overtones, sin, original sin, and then buying your way into heaven. Anyway, we'll get into that. So, I guess just to, set the stage here, how did you actually get into modeling out, Bitcoin's energy or gold? What's your background there?
So my original background is in civil engineering and infrastructure mega projects. I've got a master of civil engineering as well, where I did a lot of work on like environmental management. That was in the long ago. Before Bitcoin was invented. I found Bitcoin in the bubble of 2013. I thought it'd change the world. I was a idealistic yuppie elite. Had just finished my MBA from Oxford. Searching for meaning, and I found that through Bitcoin. And at the time, it was about $1,000 each. Everybody goes into Bitcoin, thinking they know everything, thinking they're the smartest guy in the world, wanting to fix Bitcoin, wanting to change Bitcoin. You quickly learn otherwise. And after the big price drop down to $400 and seeing all of the FUD that was coming out against Bitcoin, I said, what can I, as effectively a useless civil engineer, can't code, can't do anything, like what can I bring from my civil engineering and physical mining background to Bitcoin? And since civil engineers invented life cycle analysis and all that kind of stuff, I was very well equipped to sit down and do an analysis. And I suppose just due to the nature of the Bitcoin ecosystem in 2014, the release of my work coincided with Mount Gox going under. The analysis sort of got lost to the ether until I resurrected it in 2018. So that's effectively my background: a civil engineer that used to build big infrastructure, found Bitcoin, and saw that no matter how big the infrastructure, the physical infrastructure is, it's all irrelevant compared to the infrastructure that is Bitcoin. So I'm always been an infrastructure man, and I still am. It's just now I decide to work on the only infrastructure that matters.
Yeah, that's well said. I mean, the beautiful thing about Bitcoin is, a lot of people think the only way to contribute is contributing to core or whatever. But as it turns out, everybody has a part to play, and you certainly, found your niche. I found your stuff very useful. And of course, we were talking before the show about why comparisons to gold or the traditional financial system are incomplete in a way, and they don't fully necessarily capture the scope of what's happening there. But we still make those comparisons. People still want to have rough guesses around them, and your work has been some of the best in elucidating that. So it's been a great contribution so far.
So a lot of my work is biased by being in sort of like the I don't know if I'm going to get banned for saying this, the pre-carbon hysteria days. But when I was studying, environmental management back in '08, the focus was pollution, and resource sustainability. Obviously carbon is a huge element, but don't forget, we're running out of stuff. We're running out of fresh water. So when people want to compare polluting industries with Bitcoin, you can't just compare electricity. You have to think about everything. Gold, you can't plug something into the wall and spit out gold. Trillions of liters of water need to get used, cyanide, and that all shows up as zero emissions.
Right. Yeah. There's an ecological footprint to gold, and obviously to
or even to banking, to everything, really.
Urban installations, parking lots. Of course, yes. And this is another point that's totally underappreciated in the dialogue. I mean, we're looking at energy, electricity numbers. We're not looking at numbers of habitats displaced because of gold mining, which just pulls up, square miles of earth, and requires very toxic chemicals to perform some of those extraction processes. You're absolutely right. And Bitcoin is a synthetic dematerialized gold, some would say. So
it's literally what plugs into the wall, and the little bit of metal and silicon and stuff to make an ASIC, which can all be recycled anyway. And like that is the scope. Like you can touch it, you can feel it, you can point at it. You've got, a couple of factories making these rigs. But in the scheme of things, it all pales in comparison to just, what comes out of the wall.
So,
or what comes out of the tailpipe of a oil and gas well.
So I want to talk about some of your analyses you've done. Looks like you have a new one coming out. But maybe before that, let's talk about some of these horrible conflation points. Some of these more subtle points in the debate that get lost, either because people just aren't as familiar with the subject matter, maybe they're a little naive about it, but they deserve to be clarified. I myself am guilty of making these mistakes from time to time. So first one, energy use versus electricity use. This is so commonly conflated. In my HBR piece, you very helpfully pointed out that I said energy when I meant to say electricity. What's the difference here, and why does it matter?
Yeah, so this is probably one of my favorite topics because it hits close to home. So, like you guys would have noticed, a lot of famous Lebanese Bitcoiners, your friend Jessica, included. We recently learnt
she's Lebanese, right? Yeah, that's what she
now
said.
The reason, so I'm also Lebanese. Got to spend 5 years there, high school and freshman year of university, and Lebanese are naturally primed for Bitcoin, and we naturally understand the energy versus electricity debate.
Okay.
Lebanon doesn't have electricity all the time. There's
Right.
rationing, everything. So we get 12 hours a day of electricity, and then we have to figure out how to get energy. So all apartment buildings in Beirut have a big diesel generator down in the basement with a diesel tank room, because Lebanon has never had electricity, and everybody makes their own energy from oil.
Right.
And
Wow.
life goes on. And this is fully the case for I'd say multiple billion people. 1 billion at least have no grid whatsoever, and there'd probably be at least another billion that are on Lebanese conditions. There's a huge difference between electricity and energy. Now, Bitcoin always gets stung that it uses XYZ percentage of global electricity consumption. Bitcoin doesn't need electricity. Bitcoin needs energy. So Bitcoin doesn't necessarily need a grid to survive like these billions of people I've told you about. It just
Right.
needs an energy source. So in some particular places that happens to be a grid, and in other particular places it happens to be the tailpipe of an oil and gas well.
Right. And so I guess the point is here that Bitcoin isn't necessarily depriving anyone of electricity anywhere. And it's not necessarily driving up electricity prices because there's this abundance of energy, right?
So to contextualize, so energy is defined, by the World Energy Association as transportation energy, heating energy, and electrical energy. And of the 160,000 terawatt hours of energy produced by civilization each year, the grid produces 25,000.
And the remainder is
transportation and heating.
Right. So burning coal, burning firewood,
and now
burning gasoline.
people say you need petrol, to drive your car. There's nothing preventing someone from hooking up an ASIC to a good old fashioned 5-liter V8 and putting up a few gigahashes as they're driving down the highway. It might not be efficient, but it's doable. As long as you have energy, you can turn it into Bitcoin.
So the scope of what Bitcoin consume, excuse me, sorry. So the scope of what Bitcoin consume is not solely limited to the world's production of grid electricity, is what you're saying.
Oh, not at all. And there's enough waste methane to power Bitcoin multiple times. Maybe not 100 times over, but something like 5 or 6 times over.
Totally.
Which realistically, by the way technology goes, ASIC's already at 5 nanometers now. There's rumors that Intel has a 2 nanometer chip, and that's effectively the wall. So in 5 years, you're probably going to start having just commoditized like ASIC rigs, that you sort of stay like current and don't get obsolete. For 18 to 24 months, you won't have just like extreme exponential like hash rate growth. Waste methane alone could power Bitcoin, to a valuation of 50 trillion or 100 trillion or whatever it is.
So the next conflation point we have to do is, and this is a classic one, usage of energy versus actual climate impact from a CO2 perspective. So people in academia does this all the time. They look at an implied, excuse me, my voice is so bad today. They look at an implied energy consumption figure of the Bitcoin network that they derive from hash rate and a best guess of what kind of ASICs are active on Bitcoin. And then they extrapolate that to a carbon emissions figure. They, superimpose some sort of emissions factor on top of that electricity consumption, and they get a CO2 figure in tons. But they're often just using a generic world grid, just a generic carbon factor. So tell me about why you probably shouldn't be doing that with Bitcoin.
Okay, so with there's a metric, it's called carbon intensity, which is effectively your tons of CO2e, which is a very important term. So CO2e is CO2 and CO2 equivalents, which are the other greenhouse gases, which we'll talk about later in the other conflation points. So every source of energy has a different carbon intensity. So coal, for example, has an intensity of at the 50th percentile level, about a ton of carbon per megawatt hour. Whereas something like hydroelectricity is closer to 10 kilos, so 100 times less overall greenhouse gas emissions. So on average, the renewables, in the 20 to 50 kilo range of carbon per megawatt watt hour. So for example, solar ranges from 10 to 50 depending on how the solar panels are constructed, but generally speaking, your fossil fuels, coal's about a ton, oil 700 800 kilos, natural gas is a bit better, in the maybe 500-600s, but the difference in intensity between renewables and fossil fuels is stark. So even when you add even if you have like a coal dominated grid like China, let's say that it's 70% coal, the fact that the other 30 is hydro, brings China's grid intensity down lower than the US's. Not China wide. Obviously, the provincial grids that are half coal, half hydro.
Yeah, it's been interesting to dig into the China grid. It's such a deep rabbit hole, actually. I basically figured out, not to derail the conversation, that the reason there's so much Bitcoin mining in China is not because China has some special affinity for Bitcoin or anything. It's because China is the number one source of basically overabundant, wasted, or curtailed energy on the planet, as far as I can tell. Whether it is, super abundant excess of coal in Xinjiang or Inner Mongolia, an excess of wind or solar in those same provinces, they have a huge amount, which is curtailed. Or, of course, as we all know, excess of hydro in Sichuan, Yunnan. To me, it seems like our particular epoch in history where China built up so many energy resources over the last kind of 30 years, and then they had too much energy that they couldn't integrate the grid and get it all together. That seems to be why Bitcoin hash rate was so China dominated. And it has to do with effectively the poor integration of the grid. It's kind of a non sequitur, I know. But talking about the grid, actually, in one of your articles, you look at the breakout of the U.S. grid. And yes. It's so just to refresh us, it's about, I want to say 60% non-renewables. And then, if I'm getting this right, 20% nuclear and 20% renewables. Is that kind of a fair breakout?
Yeah, fair breakout. I personally love considering and love conflating nuclear with renewable. But the eco-terrorists, they simply don't like nuclear. And I've got in my article a bit of a look at the trends. The market share of nuclear power is unfortunately going down over the years. But yes, your assessment correct. 40% gas, 20% coal, 20% nuke, 20% renewable.
So
there or thereabouts.
And it's so depressing because I'm a big proponent of nuclear as well. And the term renewable, I mean, it doesn't really mean anything to me. I mean, what's renewable? Like, we've got enough uranium in the world, out there in the Earth's crust to power all of our energy demands many times over.
In one postcode in South Australia, you'll have enough uranium to power the world forever.
That's right. Yeah. And to me, like, the barriers for nuclear seem to be mainly political, and they have to do with making it costly to run a nuclear power plant. And we see terrible things like in Germany, they shut down 7 nuclear plants after Fukushima, purely an aesthetic choice, really. And then as a result, the carbon intensity of their grid increased. So it was just a dramatic self-own by the Germans. So returning to that US grid, so if you had to weigh your best guess for, the blended energy mix of Bitcoin, where would you benchmark it relative to the generic US grid?
Because you're familiar with my work, I like to just take like educated best guesses, like based on incentives. So Bitcoin's a worldwide, technology. So you'd have to, like, as a baseline, assume that it runs on the worldwide grid as like a baseline assumption. Then you have to look at incentives and factors of mobility.
Yeah.
So yes, although it's worldwide, like, it's highly mobile. Therefore, logically, you'd conclude for the maximization of profit, like, mining will tend to go to the cheapest, risk-adjusted, cheapest jurisdictions they can find. So, like, not everyone wants to go and mine, in Sichuan in wet season. That might not match, their risk profile. They've got geothermal options in Iceland or whatever. The point is, they're mobile enough, to chase their natural incentives. So if you do that, in my original work, I just concluded that, doing all of that is too hard. Let's just be conservative and assume Bitcoin, runs on the world grid. But luckily enough, that my rivals over at Cambridge scratched together some grant money and actually went out to the field, asked the questions, and got the number. And the number is 75% of miners use renewables at a total of between 29 and 39% of their total energy mix. So they're all using renewables in one way or another. And it's anywhere, the guess is between 29% and 39% renewable, which is the low end estimate. 29% is the world grid,
is
effectively.
That right?
And 39% is what their survey shows and factors in seasonal migrations, because they do spend months like in the hydro fields where carbon intensity is almost nothing.
And that energy is not being used anyway. I mean, there's virtually no big cities in Yunnan or Sichuan.
Well, a third of the energy that civilization produces every year is waste. So enough to power Bitcoin hundreds of times over.
Right.
So the
If
methane
Bitcoin
is just a very tiny part of waste, but it's a good opportunity because it allows, oil and gas businesses, to turn their waste into a bit of profit and knock down their greenhouse gas emissions. So we'll talk about methane when we talk about that conflation point.
Yeah, we'll get to that. So to put the code on this section, you can't just assume, given the knowledge and information we have today, that Bitcoin is following some generic pattern in terms of its carbon intensity. You probably should drill down and try and ascertain where the miners are, what their behavior patterns are, so that we can make a more precise estimate, basically, of the carbon emissions.
The thing is, because it's so dynamic, it's pointless to even make an estimate, because whatever you estimate now, tomorrow the hash rate will change, the estimate's wrong. The important thing is consistency. So if you do want to treat Bitcoin as an average world grid, every year that you want to criticize Bitcoin, you'll have to update your critique with an updated carbon intensity of the contemporary world grid. You can't
which is
slug
dropping,
Bitcoin,
right?
So in 2012, when I originally did the, or 2014 when I did the study, between then and now, the world grid's carbon intensities dropped 25%.
Yeah.
So there you go. Bitcoin's dropped 25% in its emissions. So just be consistent with the metric you're evaluating. So don't slug energy use today based on a 2013 grid, for example.
Yeah, well said. And this is something people haven't noticed. The U.S. grid has also become less carbon intense, not necessarily due to the growth of renewables, frankly, but actually because more natural gas is being used in the U.S. instead of coal. And,
so natural gas is half the impact of coal. Yeah, it's still 500. It's still half a ton per megawatt, but that's better than 1 ton.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's dramatically better. And
look, with carbon capture and special technologies, you can get nat gas down to the 50s. But it's very expensive and no one is being forced to do it. Who knows, if you have carbon taxation schemes and all of that, what happens in the incentives and the economics change, you might have as Trump would say, beautiful clean coal and beautiful clean gas, and coal can get down to the 300s with carbon capture. Most American coal has carbon capture, but zero Chinese coal has carbon capture.
Right. And yeah, it does trouble me that, Bitcoin still has a lot of China presence. China is building something like 40 coal plants this year. I mean,
it is unfortunate, but unfortunately, these are the incentives.
Yeah.
It's only logical. And the incentives will turn soon enough.
Yeah, my view is that China probably actually has the state capacity to dramatically decarbonize their grid if they wanted to. So it's just a matter of when the CCP starts to consider it a priority. The good news is that they are aggressively pursuing, trying to root out and eliminate mining in places like Inner Mongolia, although that might actually be more of a regional thing as opposed to a state, directive. But Inner Mongolia has been very genuinely aggressive in cracking down on miners. Got some new news about it actually this week. And Inner Mongolia was the number 2 province in China during the dry season for Bitcoin mining, behind Xinjiang. And it was 70% coal. So them cutting it out makes the state of affairs much better for Bitcoin. So I'm very much celebrating that, and I hope they continue that in the other coal-fired provinces. So let's see. Moving on to the third conflation point. This is a more subtle one, actually, I would say. Carbon dioxide emissions versus greenhouse gases. When people think about greenhouse gases, they think about CO2, but there's obviously others. We talked about methane. What is the difference there, and how does sort of Bitcoin come into play here?
All right. So a greenhouse gas is basically any of the gases that turn our planet into a greenhouse. CO2 is one of them. Methane is another very highly potent one. We've got some also the fluorinated gases, like fluorocarbons, the stuff that's in our deodorants and whatnot. Also known as F gases. And we've got some I believe the other group is nitric oxides. But effectively, of all of the greenhouse out of all the greenhouse gases, only carbon only accounts for about 80% of all of them. So when they say Bitcoin uses XYZ% of the world's CO2 emissions, why are we only looking at CO2? Like, why aren't we looking at all greenhouse gas emissions? So that already makes like the ratio reduce. And the important thing about Bitcoin is it actually eats methane.
Right.
So methane causes 4 times the heating impact, per molecule or whatever it is, as CO2. So it's very highly potent, and as a like a not insignificant amount of all greenhouse gas emissions yearly, maybe 2% of them, are a result of methane flaring. So for the benefit of the listeners, methane flaring is basically to be able to like pull oil out of the ground. You need to release some methane gas.
Right.
And this goes out basically the tailpipe of a well, as pure methane. And to save the environment, this methane is burnt, it's flared, resulting in an impact that is more close to CO2.
Because
So
the
reduces the greenhouse impact by 80%. Now Bitcoin can plug directly into this tailpipe. So not only does Bitcoin not emit CO2 in this case, it also decreases the amount of CO2 that's being emitted into the environment, like as a potential. Now this industry isn't huge at scale, but it's scaling up, and huge companies. A good example is the ACA group through their new subsidiary CT.
Mm-hmm.
They funded this venture with $70 million. I can't remember what it was, and in their letter to shareholders, they basically said, we want Bitcoin to be the world battery, and like we are going to like invest toward these ends. Like there's heaps of just wasted stranded energy, and we have the industrial know-how to like go out and get it. So more and more people like will just start learning about the incentives. It's just information asymmetry. If you read the conclusions that I wrote in 2014 in my 2014 research, they've pretty much played out to a T, and not because like I'm I'm unusually like insightful or intelligent or anything. It's just a simple matter of just chasing the logical conclusions of the incentives. Like it's textbook stuff. Like Bitcoin miners do not differ at all from commodity miners, like in terms of like textbook terms at all. The only difference is the production cycle. Gold is 6 months. Bitcoin is a difficulty period, 2 weeks. That's the capex and opex like planning cycle. But other than that, all the incentives are the same. All the motives are the same. It's just some people like mining by plugging into a wall, and getting smart maybe with cooling and data center configuration and whatnot, and others are pulling digging holes in the ground that you can see from space, to get their treasure. But other than that, like there's nothing too special about the mechanics, the business mechanics of mining Bitcoin. Just a Bitcoin mine is agile. You can't move a gold mine.
Right.
But other than that, everything's the same.
Bitcoin mine goes in a shipping container and genset maybe for natural gas, and you can move it around. With the flared mining use case, it has fascinated me ever since I met Steve Barber. I would say maybe back in 2017, 2018.
Yep.
I mean, he was really on the vanguard of this. Now there's hundreds of millions of dollars that have been thrown at it across a number of companies. New ones come up on my radar every week. I've talked to publicly traded oil firms thinking about doing it, so this is a really material theme. And if I had to guess, I would say a really significant portion of Bitcoin's hash rate will be produced this way.
Yeah. Look, I've got a timeline for it.
Okay, let's hear it.
It sounds bearish, but I'm saying 2025. I say that because TSMC will have its mega foundry open by like 2024, among other like mega foundries. So the chip shortage will finally be over. Mm-hmm. And probably, the foundry lithography will probably have hit a wall by then. So everyone will be producing ASICs, and like you'll really start feeling its impact in the oil and gas industry. When an ONG company can buy an ASIC and know it's mass produced and doesn't need to be replaced for another 2 years. It can just sit and collect waste for 2 years and then get recycled. It might still be a bit early now, but like the people that are taking advantage of it now will be making very good profits.
So your timeline is that what percent penetration of Bitcoin's hash rate do you expect in 2025?
I'd
not to put you on the spot.
I'd say a quarter of Bitcoin will be powered by waste, either stranded energy or waste. A quarter of Bitcoin hash rate 2025.
And there's other sources of, I say call it non-rival energy, because it's energy that's just not making it to the grid otherwise, so it's not rival in consumption.
Yep.
There's plenty of other sources of that which are similar in nature. So landfills, for instance, a lot of methane, lots of methane, huge amounts. And in some cases, they're connected to a pipeline, or in other cases, they are wired up to the grid, and so they can funnel power into the grid. In other cases, they're not, and the gas is uneconomical and it's flared. So there's all manner of systems that are producing this excess and this waste and these stranded resources. Bitcoin gobbles them up. No other commodity can do that.
But the current bottleneck is the chips, as they say. So the chips are giving us a bit of a problem, and you can have a look. Like the last shipment of Antminer S9s that left the Bitmain website were going for $90 an S9. So I don't know, that was a year ago or something. Now people paying $1,000
for an S9,
for an Antminer S9, and you can't get an Antminer S19, which is old tech.
Yeah, it's obsolete tech almost.
It's not that bad, but it's got very high energy per terahash. Mm-hmm. The S19 is maybe half the energy. But the price is so high. Yes, we did have a pullback, but still the cost to mine, like a good proxy that I like to use is the 100-week moving average. And that's what the best miners can probably mine Bitcoin for, which would be, somewhere in the low $20,000 range at the moment.
Yeah, that's what I've heard as well. S19s are mining very cheap. There's supply constraints. The foundries do not prioritize the Bitmains or the MicroBTs. They prioritize their tier 1 clients, whether that is Apple or Qualcomm or Broadcom or NVIDIA. And the Bitcoin miners, frankly, get the scraps. And especially Q3, Q4, that's when they make all the phones for Lunar New Year. They make the phones for Christmas. Bitcoin ASICs do not get made. And that's because the Bitcoin industry is not a predictable buyer of inventory at the foundries, as far as I understand it. I'm not, a subject matter expert on it, but that's my read on it. So you're right. It does have to do with this supply constraint. I kind of want to talk about your work. You've done a lot of work on quantifying the impact of gold and, the financial industry, and Bitcoin is kind of like a hybrid of the two. Some say it's like the asset itself, some say it's the payment network. And so those are the, most local cousins of Bitcoin. Maybe before we dive into it, tell us about the merit of that comparison and how it should be caveated also.
Yeah, so I don't like comparisons, but sometimes you have to give the people what they want, which is a comparison. So whenever you're trying to compare anything with Bitcoin, what people have to understand is Bitcoin is effectively perfectly definable. So what is the impact of Bitcoin? It's just whatever's getting plugged into the wall in the mines, and the very few support staff and officers that are associated with it. We were talking about it earlier. Coinbase, publicly listed $50 billion company, doesn't have an office, doesn't have a HQ. Kraken, another probably similarly valuable exchange, no headquarters. It's just the finance sector needs over 60 employees directly, about 60 million people. This doesn't include support staff, cleaners, accountants, just people making sure the financial and insurance system runs smoothly.
Right.
Bitcoin will never need really technically anyone to ensure it runs smoothly. It runs smoothly whether people participate or not. But if you want to steel man it a little, Bitcoin could probably survive with the concerted effort of maybe 1,000 people.
Right.
And it's proven that in history. It's literally, it was born and raised and reared by a group of 10,000 randoms. It doesn't need an industry to make sure it survives and runs smoothly. So yeah, Bitcoin is whatever goes into the wall. All right, what's fiat? Good luck defining fiat.
Right. I mean, the problem is with the fiat comparison, you get back to the state's monopoly on violence and the state as the, in particular the US, as the guarantor of the dollar system. And then you have to go about quantifying government outlays and military expenditure. I mean, there's definitely a causal line between maintaining the validity of the dollar system and our military adventurism. But people totally roll their eyes at you when you start to point that out, because it's such a diffuse comparison. Whereas with Bitcoin, of course, it's this mathematical knowable thing. But I don't know. I don't think you can actually untangle that from the security model of fiat, so to speak.
So I will endeavor to untangle sub elements. So I did a pretty lazy update of the banking system a couple of weeks ago for Bitcoin Magazine, just because I don't like comparisons, and I just merely indexed assumed growth, 2% a year or whatever it was. So I thought I'd sit down and have a closer look at banking, and I now do have a defined scope. The UN and the International Labour Organization have economic sector definitions, very, very specific, well-defined definitions. And I had a look at the finance and insurance sector, and I assessed the impact of that. The update is, the finance and insurance sector effectively uses about 2.5% of the world's energy, which makes sense. It is responsible, for between 7 and 10% of GDP. And in future sit downs, I will uncover the greenhouse gas emissions of a functioning government, mandatory functions, and social security. So I'll leave health and whatnot out of it, and that's a defined sector. And I'll also look at the impact of the world's militaries. And I'll see if I can get some transparent literature on that. And really, if you want to compare Bitcoin to fiat, you have to compare it to the emission. So Bitcoin, as I try to tell people, it's a very Oxonian term. It's a PPE system: politics, philosophy, economics. It is a total package, and you have to take all three or none at all. And you have to take them together. So as something that offers a total political, philosophical, and economic solution, you've got to compare it to the finance sector, the government sector, and the military.
That's very well said. You know, I applied to Oxford to study PP when I was younger.
It's a tasty one too. That's probably too royal for my blood. I'm just lazy MBA student.
Well, it's a moot point. I didn't get in, so
yeah.
That's the degree you do if you want to become the prime minister or something. You know, it's really,
very true. But if done well, it's a perfect primer for Bitcoin.
Totally, yeah. Bitcoin is a full stack institution. It's a political system, has economic rules, and it substitutes.
It's a very simple political system, but it's a political system nonetheless.
Totally. And it doesn't rely on explicit violence. It relies on this insurmountable wall of energy. That's really it. And in my view, that's much superior to having, 12 Ford-class aircraft carriers patrolling the Straits of Hormuz or whatever it is. But to each their own. So when you look at this 2.5% figure for finance, where does that compare to Bitcoin on a strict percentage basis?
On the spot here, numbers off the top of my head, I think it's close to, Bitcoin is like 1/40th, I believe. So in terms of the world's total, like a greenhouse, like total CO2e emissions, Bitcoin would be about, 0.1%.
And then you also have a good study of gold, which you wrote in Bitcoin Magazine. And this is an interesting one because, gold is economically bigger than Bitcoin by a factor about 10, right? It may transmit less value than Bitcoin. I mean, I would question how many gold settlements there are per day. Probably not that many. I mean, how common is it to actually make a gold transaction? Can you imagine? Like handing someone, like a Krugerrand or something like that. But be that as it may, gold is bigger than Bitcoin. It also consumes, according to you, more, electricity than Bitcoin. It has a greater CO2 impact than Bitcoin, but not by the same factor as it is economically larger than Bitcoin, right?
Correct. So there's a reason for this.
Okay. So let's hear it.
Again, it's numbers off the top of my head here. They sound fantastical because they are, but like the numbers are what the numbers are. So like all of the gold that's mined in the world every year will fit in your apartment, like roof to ceiling. Or not.
Even a Boston, a small downtown Boston apartment?
Yeah, 600 square. You can fit all of the world's gold in a 600 square foot apartment, roof to ceiling. That's it. That's the 3,000 odd tons of gold we get.
Right.
It weighs 9,000 tons per cubic meter. 9 tons per cubic meter.
Right.
So it's very dense. It doesn't take up much space. To get that, you need something like 1,000 Great Pyramids of Giza of waste rock, something like 10 trillion liters of water, billions of tons of cyanide, and like none of that counts as like emissions.
Right. Where do you
slave
count?
labor? I think like in Latin America, there's more money in illegal gold mining than there is in cocaine now. Like they're ruining the Amazon, but like none of that is emissions.
Yeah.
Bitcoin plugs into the wall. So the gold mining industry used cyanides. African slave labor uses mercury because it's cheaper.
Yeah,
And they have to light the
actually,
mercury on fire to get rid of the waste mercury. And they usually get, the village kids involved to sell, like, blow out the flames. Like it's like illegal metals mining is harrowing. And if the lefties actually knew the extent of it, I think they'd all sell their jewelry.
you know, my sister went on an archaeological dig in Mali, and just across the river in Senegal, I
Yeah.
believe, there was a gold find, and something like 30 to 50,000 people flocked to, a dusty patch of land in Senegal and started mining it with hand tools
Yep.
and, stripping the land, right? And you're right, they use mercury to, I guess, like distill the gold. I don't know. They precipitate
Oh,
the
it's just to
gold,
leach
maybe. I
it.
don't know the
It just
exact
leaches it
chemical
out of
process.
the rock. That's basically it. So
Out of the
gold
rock.
mining is this.
Right.
So it's not as glamorous as it used to be with like panning for gold. Now you just dig as much ore-rich rock as you can. You crush it. You soak it in cyanide. Turn it into a slurry, and you get the gold out.
Right. And so what she said was, they had to, they fished in the river, but they had to fish upstream, obviously, of the mine
Yeah.
because they were literally dumping mercury effluent into the river.
Yeah. Well, that's happening in the Amazon now as well, like in big amounts. So yeah, I talked about a lot of this in my talk in Riga, which you can check out on my YouTube channel. Orange coin good, yellow rock bad. I think if people really appreciate like how terrible gold mining is, they drop gold for reasons other than what GBTC tells
Right.
people.
And one thing I think people don't appreciate is like ore rich. I'd spent some time with a gold prospector 2 weeks ago. Oddly enough, I learned a lot about gold. Ore rich gold or ore is considered to have something like a density of 6 grams of gold per ton. I mean, it's incredibly like diffuse. Like even ore that it's considered
That's
rich
a
in
good
deposits.
ore. Six
Right.
grams per ton is a good. Like I'm telling you, you
And
need
that's
like
good, right?
thousands of great pyramids of Giza of waste rock to just fill up your room with gold. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all you get. So yeah, now can you see where the 6 grams per ton, like why it makes sense? Like you don't actually get much gold. So like these African slaves slave all day, and they maybe pull out, half a gram a day of dust. But yeah, half a gram's still all right. That's $25. The
Yeah.
slave master only has to pay $2.
Yeah.
Like
I
I
mean,
say it nonchalantly, but it's but like people need to hear this. Like this is what happens.
totally. So that's what's not accounted for in the gold emissions debate. Despite that, gold still does produce, consumes a lot of energy, and it has a big ecological footprint. And you need, petroleum and gasoline to run the machines and so on. So that's gold. That's finance. Maybe to zoom out a little bit, there's been a lot of conversation around, offsets as a way. If you're feeling guilt, this is the part where we return back to the religious metaphors. If you want to buy your indulgence to get into eco heaven, one of the tools is an offset. We didn't talk about this beforehand, but curious as to your thoughts as to, the validity of that to like remediate the climate impact of, the Bitcoin you own.
Yeah, no, I love offsets. So the best way to offset is like you just buy Bitcoin. And if everybody who wanted to offset just bought Bitcoin, fiat would die and like the environment would fix itself
That's fair.
effectively. So that's why I don't tell when people say pens, I'm like I don't know what to tell you. Like so for me, I always say Bitcoin like is only the second charity in history where if you donate to it, you'll become wealthy.
Right.
First
The
charity
tithing.
being so the first charity that allowed you to do that, like donate and get rich, was like the Clinton Foundation. But this charity is much, much better. So with Bitcoin, all you have to do is just donate every day, what you can. And if you get, according to NIDIG, there's 46 million US Bitcoiners.
That's
If
right.
everyone paid $10 of daily auto DCA penance, that's a $500 million wall of Bitcoin coming in relentlessly daily. That's a $500,000 Bitcoin. And a $500,000 Bitcoin will mean like the environment is soon to be saved. So yeah, whenever you feel guilty or penance or you want to do charity, you just buy Bitcoin and hold it. And like
That
you've done your charity. So you said energy has like religious undertones. You don't spend this long in the energy trench and then don't naturally gravitate to Bitcoin as your religion.
Yeah, it's this is Friar Haas
Yeah.
for us. So zooming out even further, I guess, so we can debate the minutiae all day, and I think it's actually important to have like some good estimates, some like facts that we can level set and then, argue about the norms from there. What's your view of this ultimately? I mean, I think my view is that it basically comes down to whether you think Bitcoin is a valid or legitimate system, and there is no threshold at which someone who thinks Bitcoin is invalid or, fundamentally a bad system, there's no amount of the energy that they'll, permit or believe is tolerable for Bitcoin to consume. Is there a middle ground, or is that sort of, the ending point of the debate, basically?
No, if we can like shift the debate, and I'll be asking the Cambridge guys to do this. So I've taken the liberty of estimating the Cambridge assumed carbon intensity. So they give a terawatt hour figure. I would also like them to give a carbon emissions figure, because in the scheme of things, like it just looks like Bitcoin it's wasting 0.5% of the world's electricity, where in the scheme of things it's contributing 0.1% of the greenhouse gas emissions and like trending down.
Yeah.
So
I
if we
agree
can bring
that
the playing field back to just greenhouse emissions, like civilization has only ever advanced in the history of civilization when we've unlocked new sources of energy. So this is one of the things like I banged on in the early days, that like don't be afraid of energy. Like we need energy. If you want your communist utopia Star Trek replicator world, that necessitates effectively free unlimited energy. It's
yeah,
not infinite money printing. You need a way to get energy.
real resources. I've never actually watched Star Trek. Do you know what they use in the show? Is it like nuclear fusion or something, because they're in a
I think
post-scarcity world?
they literally like harness like entire systems worth of energy through some mechanism. It makes the show work effectively, but like the thing is, like, this is something that can happen on Earth. Like instead of a monetary UBI, an energy UBI, like where energy is so abundant it's free. And effectively, if you have access to free energy, that's a basic income. You can
Right.
get anything you want, especially if you have a 3D printer or replicators or whatever. As long as you get free energy, like that's a UBI, and that's at least something real, not printed money and like that's like given out. So like energy is good. Use more energy as much as you can, but like also pollution is bad. So we got to figure out like we don't want to go and bulldoze all of our coal plants and nuclear plants like just yet. But yeah, absolutely, we need to figure out like ways of getting more clean energy. But whether we get more clean energy or not, there's enough waste and like curtailed energy out there to feed Bitcoin forever.
Yeah. Very,
Forever,
very well
Nick.
said.
Forever.
Forever, Laura. Forever. That's a great way to sum it up, Haas. Really enjoyed this really spirited discussion. I mean, it's a very important topic, and we need to reset it, because the debate is bad, and we're fighting on a foreign playing field. It's like an away fixture, with all the fans are hostile and jeering at you, and telling the ref to send you off for every single tackle. So we got to somehow get back onto our own turf here. I don't know how we're going to do it, but your work is much appreciated. I very much enjoyed it.
No, and likewise, like I always say, you're probably the only person that can like really empathize with me on like on this particular topic.
I haven't been at it for as long as you. I've suffered, this last year, arguing with the skeptics about it, but it's also been fun, and I learned a lot too. So I know a lot more about the energy grid than I did now, which is a great, side effect of all this stuff. So I find it pretty fun, rewarding.
But at the end of the day, Bitcoin is an energy play. It's not a finance game. I think the oilmen of like the early 1900s, like the new Bitcoin miners are the equivalent of these guys. Like energy will be the single precious commodity, of this coming century. So it's no surprise that China is starting. I think like they've got several nuclear power stations under construction as we speak. So energy is going to be the rage, and like expect more like integration between the energy industry and the Bitcoin industry.
Yeah,
I can see it becoming one industry. I could probably see a merger of the energy and Bitcoin industry more than like the finance is a fake industry. It's existed for 40 to 50 years. Really.
That's right. and yet it's 10% of GDP. It's grossly oversized, grossly swollen.
Well, now it is. It didn't always used to be.
Yeah. It's grown dramatically since the 70s.
I think energy will reclaim its place as top dog, and by extension, Bitcoin.
Well, that's we ended on a cosmic note, but this is really fun. Thanks again, Haas. Yeah. Thanks for coming on.
No, always a pleasure. Anytime. Thanks for having us.